Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tantric Awakening podcast. This is our first episode in our new format. We hope you like it. And being that today is the 11th of February, just 3 days out from Valentine's Day, we're going to dive deep into love today, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to explore what love means, how to find love, the power that love has to change things. You know, we're all a little concerned about things happening in the world right now, yet we each have the power to make a shift more than we realize. And of course, with Valentine's Day coming up, we're also going to dive into the history of the holiday and how it came to be. Maybe some things you know, or maybe you don't, but it's an interesting story. So let's dive right in and get to it.
Welcome to a new paradigm, a new way of being, free from shame, self-limitation, or cultural programming. Welcome to a new you, a new world full of endless possibilities. Welcome to your Tantric Awakening.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Andrei Knight, and this is my beautiful co-host, 𝗿𝗘𝗩𝗢𝗂𝗏.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Kendall. It feels good to be here once again, and I kind of miss doing this with you.
Yeah, likewise. It's wild how what I call the red thread flows in life. And we were on Clubhouse for a while there, and now we're here after a beautiful time of just reflection and honestly, you know, the death and rebirth portals that we go through in life. So yeah, I'm really excited because as you were mentioning before, like love is in the air. And I think love is very much a focus of our relationship, but also something that so many of us are craving or wanting to explore deeper. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to just flow with you as we, you know, connect and share essentially as well our deeply loving connection and bond. And yeah, I'm really excited for you all to get to know us because we really cherish the sacredness of our tantric union and how the universe conspired for us to come together. And then not only that, I think through our vulnerability in this talk show, we invite you to bring your full self, to be raw, to be real. And we're going to bring that to the table as well, because we know that when love cracks open our hearts, there's a remembrance, a reception, a receiving of our, you know, this is our divinity. We are holy. We are beyond this dimension even. So
Yeah, we're going to dive into a lot of topics on the show, you guys. We're really excited. For those of you that are new to Tantric Awakening, we explore self-empowerment, self-improvement, shaking off old colonial paradigms, deprogramming, perhaps if you come from a repressive religious background, for example. Anything that really keeps you from your true, authentic self.
mm-hmm.
Removing that, removing the shame, removing the stigmas, and just helping you really reconnect to the core of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And we explore all sorts of tools that'll help get you there, everything from Tantra to meditation to magic to psychedelics even. There's no topic we're really afraid to dive into. You know, this show's meant to be raw, it's meant to be real, and we're all about going there.
Mm-hmm.
So since you brought it up, if we're going to discuss love, let's start with us. We were fortunate enough to find each other. We were fortunate enough to find love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that struck me the most was what you said a few days ago when we were discussing this.
Mm-hmm.
You said love to you feels like home.
Mm.
And I think that's really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you know when you found love? How do you know? because that person feels like home, or being with that person. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be where you live, you can be out somewhere, you can be traveling, but every time you come into that person's arms or proximity, you just feel like you're home. And that really stuck with me, Kendall. If I had to define what love feels like, I think perhaps I would start there. It feels like coming home. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really love this word love, and I feel there's so many angles to it, because love is this, it's something I feel you can't always touch, but it's around you. And for me, I would say love has given me an opportunity to understand frequency in relationship to energy, right? Because at the core of all of us beings, we're not just what we see and what we, I'm looking at you right now. You're more than just what I see. There's an energy body. There's your past lives. There's so much to what love is. And even this idea of home, just for the people that are just getting to know us, and we'll, slowly, sensually express our stories as well. And we're excited for you all to get to know us. But when you mention the word home, it's really interesting. There's a book that I read at a very interesting time in my life, where I was about to explore or go through the depths of my Saturn return. But this book called Welcome Home, I actually don't even remember the author, but she shared this concept of welcome home. The actual title of the book is Welcome Home, because somehow, some way, I was in a process, and the energy of Saturn, and if you're new to like astrology, which we're going to talk about on this podcast and weave through it, is Saturn is all about discipline. It's all about the structures in our lives, and why it's like the daddy of the zodiac. It's that fathering energy. So for me, when you ask me what is home has been, this book really showed me and really has invited me to reflect on home as something that is much more than the physical reality. It's somewhere where you can go within yourself. And this was and continues to be a learning curve for me, where I think home has, honestly, for most of my journey, for a lot of my journey, especially my childhood, home was a lot to do with like the dance studio. I went dancing most days after school, and I would always find a home in the dance studio, because that was my form of expressing my emotions. Home also was my home, where like for me, my bedroom is always a sanctuary, like so many people, right? You get to decorate it the way you want to, and I was really fortunate to have my own bedroom, so that was my oasis, my home. But yeah, to me, home, honestly, and love, the idea of love, they go hand in hand, but yeah, there's so much to it in that. Like, to me, love is, where can I find peace within any moment at any given time? Where can I find refuge? Because the reality is, we live in a world, in a time where there can be chaos. There's a lot of energies outside of ourselves. But when it comes to home and it comes to love, I think love is, can you find the eye of the storm? Can you find that? Can you remember that you are a powerful being, that you have the ability to regain your center after your nervous system went into a fight response, because you have been tossed by this idea of home. So it's been a journey to discover that.
Well, about that, you mentioned radiating a frequency, right? And we now know from acoustics and from science that harmonic resonance is a real thing. You guys, if you have two tuning forks of the same frequency and you strike one, the other one in your other hand is going to start vibrating as well, even not having been struck or touching anything. So I know in a recording studio, when you're recording a guitar, if there's any other stringed instruments in the room, you have to tape down their strings, because you pluck an A string, every A string in the room is going to vibrate. That's harmonic resonance. So when you talk about, for example, being triggered, if you are vibrating the frequency of fear which is the opposite of love.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you're at a vibratory rate that's already agitated.
Mm-hmm.
So the littlest things are going to agitate you even more.
Mm-hmm.
And plus the kinds of things that you're going to attract into your energy field, into your experience, are going to be things that resonate with that frequency of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I know when I catch myself feeling angry or fearful or anxious, you know, you did this right before we went live.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a breath. Let's consciously do that shift, because the moment you slip out of fear and into love, the same thing coming into your energy field is now going to affect you differently than when you're already in a state of fear or agitation. Now, when you're in a state of love, you can absorb it more, or you can reflect it more, but it's going to be harder for it to change your internal state. You see, you're in a more balanced, more comfortable place. Conversely, if you're feeling love, you're also going to be radiating love, that concept of harmonic resonance once again, right? So if that's what you're radiating, things that are of a fear vibration are naturally going to kind of like ricochet off your energy field and go somewhere where they find something more of like frequency. Meanwhile, the things that you will see penetrating into your experience of the world will tend to be more of a match for your loving nature and that energy that you're emanating. So literally, you can change your experience of the world even if nothing else out there changes. You can experience your experience of those things already by shifting your internal frequency. But then this idea of it radiating out, if enough of us do that, you know, and this really gets into the heart of Tantric Awakening and its mission and why we teach Tantra, why we teach energy awareness, you guys. Because I believe like this can not only improve your experience of the world, but if enough of us are aware of this and consciously doing it and consciously radiating it, like there's evidence that you can impact things on a wider scale. Right? There's this thing called the 𝗏𝗍 effect. They've done research into this, and groups of people consciously feeling a certain energy, a certain emotion does affect the surrounding city. They've done experiments in this. They've measured it, you know? So when we talk about the power of love, it's not just like, I'm in love, I feel great. Like you literally have a hand in creating a better world or a worse one if you allow yourself to live in fear.
Yeah, I think there's something really, excuse me, there's something really powerful to understanding vibration and energy, and I can attest to how much you've taught me just in our relationship over the last almost 3 years. It's wild that it's been, you know, gosh, so many lifetimes I feel like has happened through these 3 years. But yeah, it's, you know, when you're talking about just like fear kind of ricocheting and everything being a vibrational frequency, and is this a match, is this not? I feel like, you know, even how we came together is because I started the journey of just believing that love is like that love is so much more than I can ever imagine or dream of. And it really began with a step saying, I'm gonna explore self-love, and I'm going to, you know, go to the bookstore and order or get the book about the 5 love languages. I mean, I can remember that day with such clarity of me in my backyard, my parents' house, and just, it was like a sunny day, and I'm like going through this book and I'm like, so there's love languages? Like, so people, according to this book, it expresses that you can give love in certain ways, and then you can also receive love in different ways. Like for me, I think in general, you know, love, when we understand that all of us express it and receive it differently, like things really shift and things change. And I really think that's really important, especially with Valentine's around the corner and just what love is. It's like, how attuned can you be to yourself in this time? Meaning, are you giving yourself the space to reflect on how you love yourself because the more you know yourself, like gnosis,
Mm-hmm.
Gnosticism, the more you can communicate that, and with nonviolent communication. And I think what we're seeing right now in the world, Andrei, beloved, is acknowledging that we have lost sight of what does it mean to love ourselves. And why a society, why we go into states of fear or end up being controlled is because we lost attunement to our own like self-worth and that we're worthy of being protected, right? It's that reparenting journey. So for me, when you talk about home, when you talk about like love, what does love mean to me? I think it really comes back to like that internal family system, right? It came back to me of understanding, how am I relating with all my parts at one time? Because at one moment my inner child might come up, and at one moment my inner teen might come up, and then my adult's like having this conversation. So for me, I feel like Valentine's Day, and I'm excited for you to share about the history of Valentine's Day, but I feel like it's a journey of, you know, knowing yourself and then also applying that to your life, right? The application, and realizing you're worth it. There's dignity in self-love. There's dignity in knowing that even if so much is going around, feels like chaos outside of ourselves, we can come back to, like, this is how I'm going to love myself right now. This is how I'm going to show up for myself, regardless of what I'm hearing on the news or what I'm hearing the gossip at my work, or, I'm going to choose to love myself, or even maybe I'm going to choose to remove myself from a situation that's really not, supporting my mental health. It's really that attunement, because when you're attuned to yourself, when you know yourself, when you know your intuitive voice, when you know your voice, and when you're able to rise into it and take no BS around that, you stand in your power. And that's what I feel like is so needed in this world. Even though COVID's technically over, at least from my awareness, it might still be going on in some ways. I feel like we're in a pandemic still of like not loving ourselves in ways. And very soon there's going to be a Venus in retrograde where so many people are going to be reflecting very, very soon about their relationships, if you haven't already felt that, and your relationship to yourself. So I'm really grateful we're having this conversation right now.
Well, you touched on something really, really important, beloved. So many people are looking for love, and maybe this is you, outside of themselves. If you're not in a relationship currently, you might be going from bar to bar to party, and the people you meet either remind you too much of the people you've left. It's like, oh, the same old thing keeps happening to me. Or the other thing that singles very often run into is people don't measure up, right? You have your checklist, all the boxes they have to check, right? And it's like, oh, if this person only had this, if only had this. Until you find love within instead of seeking it externally, no situation and no person is going to feel quite right. You will always find flaws or reminders of the past that you left. You see, it's you that needs to change. It's you that you need to fall in love with first. When you cultivate that love inside, internally first, it makes it much easier to fall in love with the world and to fall in love with other people.
Yeah.
And in fact, even that, like, I get why we call it falling in love, because a lot of times it can be unpredictable. I liken it to almost like falling backwards out of a chair sometimes, right? But at the same time, falling, what it implies, moving downwards. I really like the statement rising in love. When you meet the right person, I mean, this is how I knew we had something really special that was really going to last and pass the test of time, because I felt myself changing, right? Any worthwhile love is going to change you in ways you haven't predicted, you haven't realized yet. I know I'm in the right place with the right person when I feel myself suddenly growing, when that growth accelerates. You can't be in a healthy relationship and be stagnant. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think people do choose, even if it's unconscious, to stay in relationships that they've outgrown.
Oh, sure.
I definitely understand that energy. And, to what you were just mentioning, I feel you and I together have been each other's catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I've known, even through the most intense moments, which we've had a lot of challenges and a lot of growth from those challenges. And it's honestly why I feel we're here today, is because we've met the shadow realm. And if you're new to psychology or just what we're very much passionate about, and by the way, we are also love, sexuality, couples, singles, all relationship coaching. So we're bringing that knowledge as well, and our expertise and our experiences to this podcast. But what I've learned is that the shadow realm is essentially the parts of us that we're afraid to meet, which so many of us, I know for me, I've had fears, you've had fears. I mean, honestly, this relationship I've had to meet my fear of intimacy and fear of vulnerability like never before, because honestly, I was so conservatively sheltered, and I celebrate where I've come from, right? That's the beauty of love and the beauty of life, is like every chapter that we go through, it initiates us towards where we are meant to all along, right? Belonging home. It's a constant discovery. It's a remembrance. So like, I feel, even just to us coming together in the shadow realm, being a catalyst, like life experiences can be catalysts. And I think it would be really interesting to take a moment just to even share a little vulnerability about where we come from, like what led us to come together, right? And I think it's very important, especially in retrospect to what's going on in the country right now, and just what I'm seeing especially. So yeah, I'm really excited about what we're talking about and curious, very curious. What are your thoughts?
Well, you mentioned vulnerability and about how we came together, so
I know. I'm like,
let's go there.
Let's go there. Well, one of the biggest things I feel like I've been acknowledging, especially in my writing, because I'm a writer, is this concept of the red thread, and this idea that there is this consistent thread that is weaving, which is what Tantra is, a weaving of our energy and our experiences. And there's just been this red thread that I've become very observant of. And so for me, I do believe through the power of belief and intention, I was able to definitely draw you into my experience. And I'm excited for you to express too your perspective. But I will preface in saying, before we met, and we met like in 2022. Yeah. And I was actually at the precipice of my Saturn return. So if you're new to astrology, I'll describe it in a moment. And if you're here and you're an astrologer, welcome. So glad you're here. Saturn, like I was mentioning earlier, it's all about just this masculine energy. It's this discipline, bring you lessons energy. And speaking of stagnation and speaking of my own personal resistance, I was somewhat, comfortable in the sense of I come from a conservative Christian background. I've been in that since I was really young. I went to preschool at a Christian, school. So I was learning about all things Christianity, all things Jesus since I was really little. But up until that point, and we'll unveil as this podcast goes. But right before that time, because I've done the whole 9 yards of Christianity. I have, I grew up in short. I grew up going to services after school, sometimes for high school. I would even go to the college services. I was devoted to, like, for example, excuse me, Campus Crusades for Christ in college. I was a devotee of the mission of God, and I was passionate, right? To be passionate about something is something I revere to this day. And what even Christianity gave me is, what is devotion? So I went through the whole like Christian world. I even went to a ministry school, Bethel School, Supernatural Ministry. Like, I went the 9 yards, Pentecostal, charismatic, devotion, dance pastor, going to Israel, walking the Holy Land, like really getting immersed, embodied into what does it mean to be like this holy, devout person. And I loved it. I'll be honest, like, there was something about pursuing something that meant so much to me, which was, I think, the foundation of love, honestly. And it served me for that time in my life. I'm very appreciative of it, even though there was a lot that I didn't agree with, which I think we'll definitely talk about around this podcast. But once my Saturn return came in 2022, I was already at a point where I had been in this space and I still felt disconnected to myself. I was surrounded by a lot of people, but somehow I was being met with resistance in the sense of the topics I was talking about, from sexuality to relationships. Women were coming to me in church in Los Angeles around womb healing. And I came to this moment of awareness, which is what catalyzed me to meet you, where I felt like my time is up. I can remember the day where I was looking around everyone worshiping, and I was just like, this is my last day in a church. And I remember being like, hearing this inside, and I could identify it as, well, at the time, probably Holy Spirit, but it was my intuition. And I heard, you're codependent and it's time to go. And I didn't know what that really meant, except that around that time I was definitely learning about codependency. And I was having this revelation that I wanted to feel like there's a difference between needs and wants, right? But I realized that there was this unhealthy relationship between me and the doctrine in the Christian world. And so I had outgrown it, and I had received the codes, but the codes were leading me to challenge what I knew about what is love, right? Like, at the time I was devoting myself to things like The Chosen and understanding Mary Magdalene and the Song of Solomon. And there was so much of like, what is love? What does it mean when it's talking erotically in the Song of Solomon? So I was already on this journey, beloved, so like much before, like a lot of time before I met you. But I knew when I was reading, for example, in the Song of Solomon, which honestly wasn't really being talked about in a lot of church pastoral, even BSSM where I went to school, it was avoided. Like, people weren't talking about breasts, like, and the body as, positively. It was...
No, I imagine they weren't.
No, I was having, male pastors tell me how to frontal hug a man because, God forbid I sin and cause him to quote unquote stumble. That was my period of culture doctrine. But nonetheless, yeah, like all these little moments.
It's always the woman's fault when the men stumble, isn't it?
Well, I think so it's interesting because when I heard that doctrine from this particular pastor, I remember having this moment of like, I don't want this anymore. And this is when I was really wanting to, what is love? To me, what is love really is, what does it mean to be a woman? I was at a prime time when I was like, I want to be a woman. And so I had this moment of questioning, asking questions about my femininity and sacred sexuality. And that led me to question everything I knew in purity culture. And honestly, I started to get very quote unquote witchy I started to track my menstrual cycle. That's what self-love was for me and still is. And I started to literally connect with the earth like never before. I started to understand that the body was a major focus that was being suppressed in my ecosystem, in my close circle. I felt the resistance of people not wanting to express it, or perhaps wanting to, but it being convoluted by like this dogmatic teaching. So yeah, when we met, it was at a really catalyzing moment where the universe was like, you're done not only with the church, but you're being invited to find the home within, even if that means walking that path alone for a little bit. And that's what it was until, we met, and it was this beautiful moment.
Well, it's really interesting what you were speaking into, like feeling uncomfortable in your own body and about your own body. You know, divide and conquer is a strategy that's worked throughout history when one culture wanted to conquer, suppress another culture. The ultimate divide and conquer, I mean, we have so much of it in the world on any basis you can think of, right? Age, race, financial status, occupation, religion. There's like so many things we've thought of to divide us from each other. But the ultimate divide and conquer, and most people don't think about it, is you from yourself.
Yeah.
If
True.
what you are craving spiritually and emotionally
Come on.
is not what you feel comfortable expressing or experiencing physically, that's a disconnect.
Exactly.
When you're told that your most basic urgings and attractions and cravings are sinful, are evil, are bad, and everybody's going to experience them, there's not a human being that's free of them. There's always going to be this division. There's always going to be this rift.
Yeah.
You see? So here we're back to, again, like, it's got to start with self-love. You got to heal that rift. You've got to work past that shame. And if you've experienced pain, if you've experienced trauma in the past, like, burying it and suppressing it only works so long. It will eventually come back to the surface until you face it, until you understand it, and until you integrate it and heal it.
Yeah.
You've got to heal that rift. It's got to, so many people are like, well, I want to make the world a better place. And that's commendable, of course. But what are you doing to make yourself a better, more whole person first? So you can show up more integrated, more powerfully into the world. That's probably the best gift you can give the world.
Yeah.
Is a more healed, more integrated you.
Absolutely. Yeah, integration is such an important, term of itself, but remembering, just like knowing that, the biggest thing I've learned in our relationship and just, gosh, in our experiences is there's truly nothing wrong with you. At the core of our being, here's the thing that has really helped me visually. Because we're not just these human bodysuits, we are energy. And, the birth, life, or the birth, death, and, ascending to the next dimension cycle, like, we are multidimensional creatures. And what I've learned is, and this changed everything for me, when I realized I am connected to all things. Like you mentioned, there's no disconnection. We've been force-fed information that says, we can't be different. We can't express part of the cosmic expression of the universe, or however you want to call it, in a different way. And the moment someone tries to control or judge or be authoritarianism over them and saying how you express is not the way I express, that's where we have the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly feel when we remember who we innately are, which is cosmic light. And I know some of these terms where like, what is she talking about? Especially if you're here and you're like deconstructing Christianity, I'm so here for you, or just any of that. I see you. We've been through it, but it's...
Well, here's the thing. If you believe in God and God created a universe this intricate, this complex, then trust that God doesn't make mistakes. Like, you're not the one thing that it messed up.
Right.
If you believe in Mother Nature, you know, that's created all these different variations of form of life, it didn't make a mistake on just you.
Yeah.
If you believe in evolution, if you believe in cosmic forces, whatever background you come from, trust that this process is intricate enough that you are not its only mistake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a comfort in that, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you're at, whatever you are lovable and you are worthy, because the universe just does not make mistakes.
Yeah.
You are here and you are the way you are on purpose.
Yeah.
And there's a loving comfort in that.
There is comfort in that. And I think for so many of us that perhaps have given our power away to external, well, people pleasing. I know I've dealt with that in my journey, or just allowing other people to define you or guide you. And it's felt like, oh my gosh, like, you know, almost like a betraying of yourself, which I totally get because I've done that. Yeah, it's when we come home, you know, when we come home to loving ourselves, there's almost like this unshakable gnosis. There's like this unshakable foundation that even if I'm confronted with energies that tell me that's not okay or that's not how you should be acting, I'm going to go back to my reference point of how I see myself, right? Because I've learned this as well through psychology. I mean, like I was talking about, like this human bodysuit. I think it's from, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like 0 to 7 years of age is when you're literally absorbing your soul. When you come into your body, you forget. Like the universe is like, all right, you as a soul, choose this contract, choose what time, choose what family you're going to be part of. And then you come into a human bodysuit and then you forget. You're a baby, you're vulnerable. From 0 to 7, you're literally absorbing your universe around you, the people, the environment, everything, the senses. And then after that is when, you know, the time when you're starting to have your own voice and you might be like saying no for the first time to your mom or your dad. And, you know, what I've learned in this journey of knowing yourself, it's giving yourself permission. And I had to give myself, I chose to give myself permission to unlearn that which was not serving me. And that's a courageous decision. Like the events that led me to you, beloved, is because I said to myself, this is not serving me. I was willing to let go of something I was devoted to for a long time. A long time where I was going to church. I mean, I went to Bible study. I was, you know, singing in front of a worship service and just absolutely devoted, on my knees crying, just feeling that. And I just felt in my heart like something needed to change. And that was Saturn being like, I think you've been in this long enough.
Well, there's something,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, something interesting there though.
Yeah.
First, you had to let go of what wasn't working.
Yeah.
And then something new came into your life. Like we oftentimes, sometimes we hang on to a situation that's not working for us, afraid that, oh, I'm just going to be all alone, or it's going to be worse if I let go, right? But it's like the letting go has to happen first in order for something new to enter in. And as you were sharing this, like I remember my own situation. Like I was both in a relationship that wasn't working and geographically in a place that wasn't working for me. And literally I left both. and traveled across the country. I used to live in Los Angeles, you guys, and I was living in Florida at the time. So I made the trek all the way back to, eventually Los Angeles, though I wasn't really planning to end up here. I just came out to teach a workshop and ended up staying. But when I was leaving Florida, and I didn't yet have the clear idea of where I was going to end up and still open to possibilities, the overwhelming feeling I had, and I've told you this before, was not that I was running away from something. Like this whole time, you talk about like following a red thread or being pulled. This whole time I had the feeling that I was moving towards something, not away from something. And once or twice I even had a dream, like I kind of saw you. I couldn't see your face, but I saw the curly, long, dark hair. I saw the outline of your figure, to the point that when we met, it was more like a recognizing than a first meeting. It was like, oh, maybe she's the one from the oh, okay. So that's my two takeaways is, you have to kind of clear your energy field before something new comes in. You have to take that leap of faith. And then that's just it. It's like know and trust that you are moving towards what you need rather than away from the things that you don't need.
Yeah.
If a situation's not working well, imagine a better one.
Yeah.
And then move towards it.
Yeah. I wanted to mention a book that really helped me. It honestly was leading me up to my Saturn return and me meeting you, and also, me deciding to move forward in my journey, which was an initiation of itself, but Women Who Run with the Wolves. And it's really powerful. I highly recommend it for anyone, especially in this time, because it's all about the power of the death and rebirth cycle and the journey that we as souls can go through in our psychology and just our initiations. And why I bring this up is because I feel... I think we've talked about this a lot, but the journey of love for me is realizing that I thought I had faith, but then I was initiated in my Saturn return, and I realized maybe how little faith I had in myself. And why I say that is because I created a persona of, I think, righteousness, essentially, of thinking I know more than others because of what I was indoctrinated into in the church, of like, that's how you're indoctrinated. You're like taught that more, like, the holiest path because, well, Jesus is returning soon. And, with that mindset, I realized that the universe, Saturn, needed to come through and really like humble me. And I'll be honest in saying that wasn't easy because it costs me. It cost me greatly, emotionally, physically, mentally.
Well, it's interesting as you say that. I'm looking down at the card you pulled before we started the show, and it's the Pathless. I know.
Well, yeah, the card itself is all about, and if you're new to cards, this is, Oracle cards and goddess cards, and I pulled it before the reading or this this podcast in order to provide some insight. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the Pathless basically talks about the person that perhaps has been, misguided by, through realms of people pleasing and giving your power away and just forgetting and disconnecting from yourself. And so what I acknowledged, because it was really difficult, mentioning cost, is like I gave my power away in the church. I was connected to this like micro or macrocosm of what is love, but it was very conditional. And the thing about the universe, and I think this is why Saturn came in, is I had to learn and acknowledge that I needed to know myself in order to love myself.
That's it.
And that required for me, it was really dramatic, but a separation, disconnection from my birth family. And it was really drastic because of exactly what I'm representing here, which is the power of using your own voice. I knew that being in integrity with myself was more important to me than trying to conform to what I felt was conditional love. And so, yeah, the pathless was, the card is really pivotal. I think not only my journey, but also I think so many people in this age is like, how can I love myself deeper? How can I forge my own path? How can I just find peace with myself?
Well, that's just it. That's how you know if a job, if a situation, if a church, if a relationship isn't the right one for you, because you start losing yourself. You start becoming someone else in order to make that situation or that relationship work. And back to home, right? The right relationship brings you back to yourself. The wrong relationship, the wrong job, the wrong situation pulls you further from yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like this dance of like right or wrong. I think how I've seen it is all of it just is, without like necessarily identifying like scales of like experience, because I can think about just like the depth of like the heart. I mean, the hardest moment where I felt farthest from love, I can also see the beauty of love being sown. Because it's like, even in, and I think this is why I'm so passionate about love in general, is because in order to really extend love, we need to know what love maybe not is, and also understand that the energy of like the goddess of Persephone is here to remind us to come home to ourselves. And sometimes that's, feeling in the eye of the storm, like finding that eye in the storm, remembering who you are.
Okay. Well, I want to pivot a little bit. I want to touch on Saint Valentine, because I think that's a beautiful story. And, how the word Valentine came to be associated with love and with this time of year. I think it's a really beautiful story, because we talked about also love's power to not just transform us, but also to transform the world. Okay, so Saint Valentine, or otherwise, when he was alive, he was known as Valentine of Terni, which is a town in Italy. Valentine was a Roman Catholic monk. And at this time in Rome, we're talking about the 3rd century, about 270 AD, during the reign of Claudius II. Most young men in Rome at that time would go through a period of service in the Roman army, because this was the height of Rome conquering all their neighbors and growing the empire, so there was a constant need for more young men in the army to keep fueling that conquest. It was mandatory. When you came of a certain age, you would go off and do your service in the military. And of course, as you know, a lot of men did not come back from that. Unless you were married and had a family. So Valentine of Terni was literally this monk who would sneak around in the middle of the night, sneak into people's homes and marry them in the middle of the night. So when the Roman soldiers came by in the morning to conscript him into the army, sorry, I'm married. I have a family, I can't go. He was literally defying the war, the conquest, the politics of the time by marrying people. This was also, unfortunately, of course, the crime that got him arrested and eventually executed.
Wow.
And And the date of his execution was February the 14th, 273 AD.
Wow.
So we actually celebrate not his birthday, not a significant wedding, where the actual date that we're celebrating, yes, the story is one of love, associated with love, but the actual date, what we're celebrating, I'm sorry to say, is the anniversary of his execution.
Just sitting in that for a second.
I know, such a good story, and I'm going to end it on such a bummer. But yeah, that's the significance of the February 14th date, is that's when his sentence was carried out.
So my question for you is, if it's known as, I mean, I remember when I was in K through 8 or K through 6, or for Valentine's Day, we would have little paper things we put on the wall, and we would put our little paper into that if we had a crush, and he's like, "You're my Valentine."
Mm-hmm.
It was so cute. Oh my gosh. And there was like usually candy attached. The days. Gosh, the innocence.
Little sugar hearts?
Yeah, but like
I miss
I'm
those.
just and maybe this is going deeper because we could talk for hours, but this whole thing of, why do you think that wasn't expressed? Because I feel like when we're talking about love, and like there's so much of what we're going to talk about over next weeks and stuff, is like the power of authenticity, right? And the truth. Even as a Christian, the verse that we always talked about, it's like the truth will set you free, just the irony of that, because I feel honestly like the truth is not fully revealed to the Christian world. Anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail, but do you feel like, how do you feel about the collective not knowing that? Like you're telling us this and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is heartbreaking. I mean, seriously, this is not okay. Like, it's not. So people were being, in order for them to not go to war, they had to like get married. And I mean, this probably talks about topics of like marriage and the construction of marriage and how it can control people, honestly. But it's interesting, honestly, I feel like we're bringing forward the truth that Persephone has around this holiday, right? Because usually this holiday is like, oh, you love on your partner, or you go love yourself, or go out with your girlfriends or your bros. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on that? Kind of just like, you're sharing something that is not very common. It's, how does that, like, you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm saying? Most people don't know this, and yet our society glamorizes love and then like doesn't talk about the fact that it's it's celebrating his death.
Oh, I see the death part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, as we break it down, that you'll find that's true of many holidays.
Like what?
Actually, like Easter. Christmas, I mean, go down the list, Halloween, all of them. And we will, as we go through the year,
right,
tell you kind of the history and the folklore and how each holiday came to be. But like most of them are missing pieces,
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the paper things, right? Like the heart shape, right?
Yeah.
Our hearts obviously aren't shaped like that, medically. They're shaped differently. This shape has often been associated with the anthurium plant, the flower of the anthurium plant, which actually at a time in history was used as a form of birth control, and at another time in history was used as an aphrodisiac.
Wow. That's interesting information.
So, that shape is associated with love.
Wow.
Just not necessarily like the physical blood pumping heart, and, is it just trivia? Is it a cute like tidbit of fact? No, because I think like if you know some of these historical tidbits, like it adds a context, it adds a richness when you understand where something came from and how it developed. And on one hand, yeah, it's kind of sad that we're celebrating this man's execution, but on the other hand, like any good romance novel, right? They talk about dying for love.
Gosh.
This man literally did.
Have you died for love with me?
Well, and been reborn. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And been reborn. But like, you know, like you were mentioning when your life fell apart and you had to put the pieces back together again, like as traumatizing as that was, there was a beauty to it. So even though this story has a sad ending, like still like that doesn't diminish the good that he did. He saved a lot of men's lives and probably started a lot of, you know, happy families. And in the end, he died for love, which is where we get this whole concept, this romantic notion, right? You know, it just, I don't know, it adds a certain richness when you know the origin of things.
It reminds me too of the energy of like protecting love as well. Because if you understand love is worthy of being protected, I think that's why people will go to great lengths. For example, you know, these people being like, okay, I will get married in order for this to happen. It's like, I feel like love is the expander, the great expander. And when it's expanding, it's when it's, or not even expanding, it's the highest vibration. And I do feel, and to speak of that moment, you know, touching back on what led me into your arms essentially was acknowledging that I could look back at it now and like have so much reverence and gratitude for it. And I also have understanding that it was time to shift gears, to go to the next level. And, you know, though it was painful, you know, to experience like, yeah, somewhat of rejection and just a little bit of abandonment around just, you know, getting kicked out of my own house and where I was living at the time. Yeah, you know, by two people that I really valued, still value in my life, but it was like very hard. You know, my own parents. I came to this moment of when I met you and when we connected on such a deep level very quickly, but also over the last 3 years, I can honestly say it's cracked me open to like what I feel Jesus and Mary Magdalene would have gone through, which I know is a big topic I'm excited to talk about with you in other episodes. But the union that they had, even just learning about love and unconditional love, like, gosh, there's been so many times where I've like cried to sleep in the best way, having been moved by your unwavering love and devotion to me.
Oh,
and it's powerful and it's important because, like, you know, like I mentioned in where I come from, like, it's like you're seeking, the seeking slowly diminish because I was experiencing it. You know, I was experiencing a new level of like, oh, this is love. Oh my gosh, I'm worthy of this. Oh, wow. And
well, ditto to all of that. You cracked me open. You helped me feel things I didn't think I was capable of feeling. I thought I had experience around love, but like, yeah, one day you meet someone that takes you to totally new places. You know, I want to touch on one other example of love having the power to change the world or shift things. That really comes up very prevalent for me. If you recall in 2020, right, after the unfortunate death of George Floyd and then the Black Lives Matter protests that erupted and all of the tension, if you recall, like, Portland was hit, you know, a lot worse than other cities. And even months later, there was still protests, some of them violent, raging there. And the police were out in full force. SWAT teams were out a lot of the nights. There was one night in, you know, late July of 2020. This woman who we know merely as Naked Athena walks out, right, between the SWAT team and the protesters. You know, some of them holding Molotov cocktails or knives, you know, there was vandalism, there was violence. And she literally walks out between the two opposing forces, sits down, and spreads her legs, right? Naked. She shows her feminine, vulnerable, naked, yet powerful self to these two angry, violent groups of men and stopped both sides in their tracks.
Wow.
After months of violence, months of conflict.
Yeah. That's powerful.
When I think of love being powerful and love having the ability to change things, like that's one incident in history that continues to pop up for me.
Yeah, that picture in of itself is so powerful. I remember when I saw it for the first time. And I believe this is why, I mean, we came together, but why love has the power to shift everything, right? Because when we love ourselves, when we love who we are, when we're able to get stripped down to our raw, primal self, which is us as a soul. All of us are just souls that chose to incarnate at this time so that we can remember an aspect of the universe, an aspect of what is awareness, right? We come into this life to learn, to explore, to grow. And what I love about, that woman who just like exposed herself is I know just having, gone through this journey of vulnerability is like, it takes a lot for someone to get to that point. Because that means they have really done the inner work. They have faced their shadows. They have deprogrammed themselves from the matrix, the programming. They have said, you know what? I'm going to stand up and meet the hearts of men. I'm going to meet these people. Why I'm here as a priestess is because I want to declare like it's time for us to come home to our hearts. When we're disconnected to the heart, that's when we see war, disconnection, when we feel the fear more than ever. And I think right now, I'm glad you brought this up because it's so present in so many people, the fear. This talk show, our union, my desire for this space is for people to come into what is our temple, a space where we've cultivated such deep reverence and respect for one another so that, our hearts could be cracked open to love. And yeah, I'm really grateful for all this beautiful time we've spent together. And
an hour goes by pretty quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I'm like,
that's why we're here, you guys. That's why we teach what we teach and why we do this, because love conquers fear.
Yeah.
And there's a heck of a lot of fear in the world. So we need more love.
Yeah.
We need more love. And
yeah. Yeah, no, I was just gonna, because there's some cards I pulled and I just wanted to take a moment. I wanted to take a moment to reflect on some of these cards, which one of them is the receiving card. And it's really powerful because this woman is like sipping from the cup of receiving love. I like to say it. And it's also, I pulled the 7 Blessings of Eve card. And yes, there's a snake and it's pointing to the egg. The egg is actually, I don't know if anyone can see
snake,
that.
Right?
Yeah. So I wanted to take a moment just because it's so real and fresh for people. We are, if you're new to astrology, awesome. I love astrology. It's how I've practically connected with my soul on a deep, deep level. And so what I wanted to express through this card is the message that for all of us, we're being invited to stir up our gifts and our creativity more than ever, and to really look at rebirthing our feminine side. And what that means is a connection to the sensuality, the parts of us that invite slowing down, really attuning into our bodies, remembering that, the snake, number 9, we're in a 9th year in a numerology. That means it's an ending year and also a reassessing and evaluating for next year. So I just want to invite you all here to consider the shedding and the reflection time that is this year. We're about to enter into a time period called Venus retrograde. Venus is all about Venusian energy, Aphrodite, love, and she's about to go backwards. What that means is that there's going to be an invitation for all of us to reflect, to reevaluate, to go after our self-love, our self-worth, our dignity, reevaluate what is working in our life and what is not working in our life. So the fact that the snake is going to the egg tells me that there is death and rebirth, transformative revelations related to the cosmic feminine. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, there's this woman that I pulled from a goddess, what is it called? The Divine Feminine Goddess Oracle deck. Megan Watterson, I think is her name. Yeah, Saint Bridget, Our Lady of Exalted Light. I give endlessly because the light is without end. My soul is all I need. Preface for this woman, she's directly connected to Imbolc, which is something we just went into, the halfway point between winter and spring. And she invites us to really reflect and go within ourselves to just shed. She gives us permission to shed that which is no longer serving. She really is like, okay, what is it that you want to let go of? And like you were talking about at the beginning of the episode today, it's like, if we want the new to come forward in our lives, the shedding, just like the shedding of the menstrual blood in the womb, it's really important to let go and surrender, which can be really confronting for so many of us. But she invites us, especially right now, we are approaching here come to March of the spring. So it's a great time to just really evaluate, even in love, like take time. I just want to even encourage everybody, like take time to tune to what is love for you, and let love reveal everything from grief, the stages of grief, to all the emotions. Like I've felt every emotion in relationship to love, I would say. Have you in your own journey?
Oh, definitely, most definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I had to say about all these. And yeah, this has been really fun. I really enjoyed just flowing with you. And also,
it's good to be back.
Yeah, we were on Clubhouse for a while, and this was like an app, and now we're here on all these other platforms, and it's awesome. And
yeah, you guys, this is only the beginning. You can find us every Tantric Tuesday. Sometimes we'll pop into Clubhouse a little bit ahead of the stream starting,
Yeah, what is Tantric Tuesday?
We'll promote it when we do it. We might still pop for nostalgia's sake into Clubhouse ahead. But the stream, you guys, you can catch the stream at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. GMT, or if you're in Australia, it's going to be Wednesday morning for you at 7 AEDT. So that's when the stream happens, and that'll happen on Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and YouTube. And then, of course, you can catch the replays on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You should be able to find us. And just really looking forward to this journey. We'll put them out most every Tuesday whenever we can. And lastly, before we close, we just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what we do and some of the things we offer if you would like some additional support. Certainly, we've got a few things that might be appropriate specifically for Valentine's if you're catching this broadcast ahead of it. What are some of the things that would be perfect for Valentine's?
Yeah.
What comes to mind?
Yeah, I definitely want to share. I wanted to address the Tantric Tuesday, reference to that. The Tantric Tuesday is related to what we on Clubhouse how we did our live show. We called it Tantric Tuesday. So I wanted to address that before answering your question. But yes, we're excited. Together, we incorporate relationship coaching with also astrology. So what I've loved about that is, yeah, just being able to, in astrology, it's being able to look at your chart. Every person that's alive has a birth chart, meaning the moment you were born, all the planets were somewhere on your birth chart, somewhere in a specific place, in a specific house that represents some part of your life. So one of the greatest gifts that astrology has given me is being able to understand how I experience love, how I'm able to connect with perhaps another person around love, and how I communicate. And for example, Mercury, the planet of communication, there's a lot that the birth chart can reveal about not only yourself, but another. So what we want to offer all of our listeners is being able to receive basically like a reading with a consultation, helping you, support you in this time, because we understand like things are going to come up, especially around Venus retrograde. So we're offering for couples a special for an in-depth reading with the both of us for $250. And then if you want to as well, if you're single, one person, we're offering that for $200. And that's just going to be a deep dive into, so much of what we're all about. We work with people that want to put in the work, that are passionate about love, want to be in integrity around shadow work and just facing parts of ourselves maybe that we're, we didn't even know we're there. So it's helped me greatly. And that's what I'm really excited about.
That's I think something that's perfect for Valentine's Day. And in general, we're here to support you, whether it's your relationship with yourself or your relationship with another, your relationship to a career. We offer coaching and counseling around all of these areas and topics. We also design exotic travel adventures and personal rituals for people. Just check the description for this episode down below, and there'll be some links for more information and how to get in touch. A lot of what we do, because the nature of what we do is very bespoke. So we get the time to know you. Okay, and we design a offering or a service or a combination of services that fits you and where you're at. So very often it can be different things for different individuals. It really depends where you're at.
Yeah, we've worked in a lot of capacities, from event production and doing, empowering sex education. We've done a lot. And so stay tuned. We're going to share a lot more as the weeks go on, and we have more to share. And I'm really excited about the journey ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, you guys. And we will see you next week. Happy Valentine's Day.